Welcome to the History American podcast. We explore the stories that transformed the opinions of our citizens and shaped our collective memory. Here, we don't just narrate the past. We analyze and focus on the events that live on in the mind of America, a journey to the heart of the facts that defined us.
If I were to ask you to close your eyes and picture the architect of a school shooting, the singular event that really changed the way we look at teenagers, at high schools, at safety in America, you would almost certainly picture Columbine.
Without a doubt.
It's a word that, it doesn't just mean a location in Littleton, Colorado anymore. It means a turning point. It basically divides the timeline of the American education system into before and after.
That's absolutely right. I mean, it is the ground zero of the modern active shooter era. It's the tragedy against which every subsequent nightmare from, Virginia Tech to Sandy Hook to Parkland is inevitably measured.
But here's the jarring reality check that we need to start with today, because most people, they know the broad strokes, the trench coats, the library, the tragedy. But what so few people realize is that Columbine wasn't actually supposed to be a shooting.
That is the one detail that just gets lost in the cultural memory, and it changes everything. It changes absolutely everything about how we interpret the event. If the plan had worked the way Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold spent over a year meticulously designing it, we wouldn't be talking about a school shooting at all.
We'd be talking about what then?
We would be talking about the deadliest domestic terrorist bombing in American history prior to 9/11.
That's a terrifying thought, because when we look back at April 20, 1999, we see the guns. We see the shooters. But you're saying the guns were actually just Plan B.
Exactly. They were a desperate improvisation. The original plan, the one they bet everything on, centered on two massive 20-pound propane tank bombs placed in the cafeteria.
20 pounds each.
They were set to detonate at 11:17 a.m., precisely during the busiest lunch shift. The calculation was to incinerate nearly 500 students instantly in the blast, and then collapse the library, which was right above the cafeteria, on top of the rubble.
And then use the guns.
To pick off any survivors who were fleeing the wreckage. The fact that those detonators failed is the only reason the death toll wasn't in the hundreds.
Okay, so today on this deep dive, we are going to reconstruct the anatomy of this tragedy. We've got a massive stack of source material here. I mean, we've got timelines, police reports, transcripts from the basement tapes, detailed profiles of the perpetrators, and the full investigation into all the missed warning signs. And our mission is really to move past the headlines and the myths. We need to understand how two teenagers could fool their parents, the police, and the court system to plan an attack of this magnitude.
And we also need to look at the massive systemic failures that allowed this to happen. There are details in these files about suppressed police affidavits and missed opportunities that are frankly they're infuriating to read.
It's a heavy subject, we know that. It's serious, it's analytical. We aren't here to sensationalize the violence, but we have to look at it clearly to understand how it reshaped our world, from, school security to the way we talk about mental health.
Definitely.
Let's start with the people behind it, the perpetrators, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. The narrative I always heard growing up was that they were these isolated loners, part of this trench coat mafia, bullied relentlessly until they finally snapped. But looking at the profiles in our source material, that's not really accurate, is it?
No, it's largely a myth. It was constructed by the media in the immediate aftermath to make sense of something that was just senseless. We want to believe that if someone does something this monstrous, they must be, visibly monstrous on the outside.
An outcast.
Right, an outcast, a ghost, haunting the hallways. But they weren't. They had friends. They had jobs. They worked together at a place called Blackjack Pizza, making pies, managing shifts. They had social lives. They weren't invisible.
I read here that Dylan Klebold actually went to prom just days before the massacre.
That's right, 3 days. 3 days before the shooting, Dylan Klebold was in a limousine with a group of friends wearing a tuxedo. He went with a friend, a girl named Robin Anderson. They had dinner. They danced. By all accounts, he seemed normal. That just doesn't fit the profile of the invisible outcast loner that the media sold us in 1999.
And they weren't unknown to the law either. This is the part that really surprised me. They had a criminal record more than a year before the shooting. In January 1998, they were arrested for breaking into a van.
Correct. January 30, 1998. And this is an absolutely pivotal moment in the timeline. They found a van parked near Littleton, broke into it, and stole a bunch of tools and electrical equipment.
Okay.
So they were caught, they were arrested, and they went to court. Now, usually this is where you'd expect the system to intervene and maybe see some red flags. And technically, the system did intervene. The judge sentenced them to a juvenile diversion program.
Which is designed to keep kids out of jail and get them back on the right track. It's a second chance.
Exactly. It's for good kids who make a mistake. So they had to take anger management classes. They spoke with diversion officers regularly. Harris even saw a psychologist as part of it.
And this is the chilling part.
This is the chilling paradox. They were considered success stories of this program. They were actually released early because they performed so well. They were polite, they did their community service, they wrote these heartfelt apology letters to the van owner.
Success stories. That is just so hard to stomach. So while they were sitting in these offices, nodding along and promising to be good citizens, what was actually happening behind the scenes?
Total, complete deception, a dual life. While Eric Harris was impressing his diversion officer with his supposed maturity, he was writing in his journal about how he had the right to rob and kill people if he wanted to.
Wow.
He was nurturing this intense, burning hatred for the owner of the van they robbed. The source material highlights this incredible disconnect. Harris began his journal right after that arrest in 1998. Klebold had started his a little earlier, in 1997. They were documenting their descent into this violent ideology at the exact same time they were being praised for their rehabilitation.
So they're playing a role. They know exactly what to say to the authorities.
Perfectly. They were masters of manipulation. They knew the language of remorse, but it was just a performance.
Well, there were mental health factors involved here too, right? I see in notes here about medication.
There were, yeah. Harris reported feeling depression, anger, and suicidal thoughts to a psychologist. He was prescribed Zoloft, an antidepressant. He then complained about a lack of focus and anxiety. He said he felt restless, so the doctor switched him to Luvox.
So he's on the radar. He's telling a professional that he's angry and suicidal.
Explicitly. So you have a young man who is telling professionals that he is struggling with anger and suicide, and he is being medicated for it. But the therapy, the treatment, it never pierced the veil of his actual planning. He was telling them what they wanted to hear while hiding the most important part.
And Klebold, was he in a similar situation?
Klebold had a history of drinking.
Yeah.
And there's a note here that he actually failed a diluted urine test during the diversion program, which usually triggers mandatory substance abuse counseling. Right. But somehow, he talked his way out of the substance abuse classes. It just seems like at every single turn, they managed to slip through the cracks or manipulate the people who were supposed to be in charge.
And all the while, they are building an arsenal. It's not just journals, they are making videos. The basement tapes.
The basement tapes are a window into their grandiosity. And you have to understand, these weren't some kind of cry for help videos. Not at all.
What were they then?
They were boasts. They filmed themselves with their weapons, the sawed-off shotguns, the Tech-9. They filmed themselves hiding their arsenal in their own bedrooms, under piles of clothes, in drawers. They were essentially bragging about how easy it was to fool their parents. The vibe is, I could have a flamethrower in here and they wouldn't even know.
And this goes back to your point about bombing. They didn't just want to shoot up a school.
No. Their ambition was so much darker. They wanted to rival the Oklahoma City bombing. That was their benchmark. Harris even wrote in his journal about hijacking planes and crashing them into skyscrapers in New York City.
That is just a bone-chilling detail, considering this was 1999. It predates 9/11 by 2 full years.
It does. It shows the scale of their nihilism. They wanted to destroy everything. They were looking at domestic terrorism benchmarks, not just settling some kind of high school scores. This wasn't about bullying. This was about annihilation.
Okay, let's unpack these missed warnings a bit more, because it's one thing to fool your parents or, a diversion officer who sees you once a month. It's a completely different thing when there is hard evidence of your threats. We need to talk about the website and the Michael Guerra investigation. This feels like the biggest what if of the entire case.
Absolutely is. This is the systemic failure that is just the hardest to reconcile. In 1996, Eric Harris started a website on AOL. At first, it was pretty innocent. It was for hosting custom levels, they're called WODs, for the video game Doom.
Okay, so just gamer stuff at first.
Exactly. But by late 1996 and into 1997, the content shifted. It became a blog for his rage. He started posting detailed bomb-making instructions. He started posting threats.
And this wasn't just him shouting into the void. He was targeting specific people. This is where Brooks Brown comes into the story, right?
Right. Brooks Brown was a former friend of Dylan Klebold. They had had a falling out. And Harris took to his website to post explicit death threats against Brooks. He posted Brooks' phone number and his home address.
So Brown's parents find this.
They find it, and they are terrified. And they did what you were supposed to do. They contacted the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. They printed out the pages and took them in.
So the police are officially notified. They have a credible, documented threat. What happens next?
An investigator named Michael Guerra looks into it. He accesses the website. And what he finds is incredibly alarming. It's not just vague anger or teenage angst. Harris is posting about building pipe bombs. He's posting threats against students and teachers at Columbine High School by name.
He's admitting to crime?
He is admitting to the exact things he's planning to do. He even writes, "I live in Denver and I'm building bombs." It's a confession.
So Garrett does his job. He takes this seriously.
He does. He drafts an affidavit for a search warrant of Eric Harris's house. This document is the smoking gun of the whole affair. If a judge signs this, the police go into Harris's house, they find the pipe bombs, they find the sawed-off shotgun barrels, they find the journals, and the massacre is prevented. Eric Harris is arrested for possession of illegal explosives. It's over.
But we know that didn't happen. The affidavit was drafted, and then what? Why was it never filed?
It was never filed. It just sat in a file, was never taken to a judge. We still don't have a 100% clear answer on why it stopped there. Whether it was incompetence, a lack of resources, or maybe a feeling that it wasn't enough to get a warrant. But the aftermath is even worse.
What happened after the shooting?
After the massacre happened in 1999, high-ranking officials at the sheriff's office met to discuss this specific document. And they decided not to reveal its existence to the public. It was concealed.
Wait, they actively covered it up. They hid the fact that they knew about this a year earlier.
The source material is very, very clear on this. The files disappeared from the official record. It wasn't until 2001, after a 60 minutes investigation and a grand jury inquiry, that the existence of this affidavit was finally brought to light.
So for 2 years, the official story was that there were no warnings.
For 2 years, the official story was that this came out of nowhere. But officials met just days after the shooting to discuss not revealing it because they knew how bad it looked. It's a massive betrayal of public trust. You have a police force that had the information necessary to stop the attack, failed to act on it, and then tried to hide that failure when the absolute worst happened.
That is infuriating. I mean, it completely changes the narrative from nobody could have possibly known to they knew and they dropped the ball.
Precisely. It strips away the idea that this was some unpredictable lightning strike. It was a gathering storm that was tracked, logged in a police file, and then completely ignored.
So, with no search warrant, they are free to continue planning. Let's talk about the weapons. You mentioned they were in a diversion program, they are underage. How do two teenagers in 1998 acquire this kind of firepower? We're talking about multiple shotguns, a carbine, a handgun.
It's a mix of legal loopholes and illegal straw purchases. The big acquisition happened in December 1998 at the Tanner Gun Show. The one with Robin Anderson, the same friend Dylan went to the prom with.
And she was 18 at the time.
She was 18, so she could legally purchase long guns, rifles, and shotguns. So she bought 2 shotguns and a high-point carbine for them.
And she just bought them and handed them over.
She did. The source notes that because they bought them from private sellers at the gun show, no background checks were required. It was a cash transaction. It was perfectly legal under the gun show loophole at the time. Anderson later testified that she didn't think they would do anything bad with them. She thought they were for collecting or maybe target practice. It just highlights how casual the acquisition of these lethal weapons was.
And what about the handgun? The Tech 9, that's a different category.
That came from a man named Mark Maines. He was a local guy who sold it to them for $500. This was facilitated by another coworker from the pizza place, a guy named Philip Duran. So you had this network of friends and coworkers who are either unknowingly or perhaps just negligently arming them for war.
And they modified these weapons, right? I remember reading specifically about the sawed-off shotguns.
Yes. And there is a deeply disturbing detail about that purchase at the gun show. The seller, the private seller, actually took out a tape measure and measured the shotgun barrel to show them the legal limit for barrel length. He was telling them, don't cut it shorter than this or it becomes an illegal weapon.
Of course.
Of course, they went home and sawed them down immediately. They cut them down to make them concealable under their trench coats. They were preparing for a close quarters assault, not for hunting.
Plus the bombs. You said 99 explosive devices?
99. It's an astounding number.
Yeah.
Pipe bombs, crickets, which were small CO2 cartridge bombs, and of course the 2 big propane tanks for the cafeteria.
And they learned how to build all of this where?
They built these using instructions from the internet. Remember, this was the anarchist cookbook era of the early web. This was an industrial-scale manufacturing operation happening in their bedrooms and garages. They were buying dozens of propane tanks from hardware stores, gallons of gasoline, clocks, batteries. The receipts alone should have been a red flag for somebody.
So we have the profiles, we have the missed warnings, and we have the arsenal. Now we move to the day itself. April 20, 1999, the plan is set. And as you said, it's not a shooting, it's a bombing. Walk us through the timeline of that morning.
It starts with a diversion. At 11:14 a.m., a small firebomb they planted detonates in a field about 3 miles away from the school.
What was the point of that?
The idea was to draw firefighters and police away from Columbine, to thin out the response time when the main event happened. It only caused a small grass fire, so it wasn't very effective, but it shows their tactical thinking. They wanted the school to be isolated and vulnerable.
Meanwhile, they are at the school.
They arrived separately. They parked their cars in strategic spots. Harris at the junior parking lot, Klebold at the senior lot. The cafeteria is located right between them. Sometime around 11 a.m., they haul in 2 large duffel bags containing the 20-pound propane bombs and set them to explode at exactly 11:17 a.m.
And this is the moment where history really hung in the balance.
It is. They placed the bags near the main support pillars in the cafeteria, surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of students eating lunch. Then they walked back outside, got to their cars on the high ground overlooking the west entrance, and they waited. They were geared up, watching the school, waiting for the fireball. They expected the windows to blow out and the library to collapse into a pit of fire.
11.17 passes.
11.17 passes.
Okay.
11.18. Nothing happens. The detonators, which were likely poorly wired or built with cheap plastic clock timers, failed. The bombs were duds.
So the grand plan, the centerpiece of a year's worth of work, fails.
Completely fails, and this is where they had to pivot. Plan A is a bust.
And this is so crucial to understanding their mindset, isn't it? They didn't pack up and go home. They didn't panic and flee.
No. They abandoned the bombing plan and immediately decided to go in shooting. This is Plan B. At 11:19 a.m., they grab their guns and start walking toward the school from the top of the stairs at the west entrance.
And the first casualties occur right there, outside on the lawn, Rachel Scott and Richard Castaldo.
Yes, they were just sitting on the grass, having lunch. It was a nice spring day.
Yeah.
Witnesses heard Harris yell, "Go, go," or possibly "Vaya, Vaya," which is believed to be a reference to their favorite movie, The Wild Bunch.
And they just opened fire.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Rachel Scott was hit 4 times and died instantly. She was the first fatality of the day. Richard Castaldo was critically wounded, hit 8 times, but he survived.
It's just chaos immediately.
Absolute chaos. Students are running, screaming. Harris and Klebold then turned their fire to the stairs leading up to the entrance. 3 students, Daniel Rohrbaugh, Sean Graves, and Lance Kirkland, are walking up. They are mowed down in a hail of gunfire.
And this is where we start to see the cruelty that defines the next hour.
Yes. Klebold walks down the stairs toward the wounded boys. Lance Kirkland is on the ground, badly wounded, and he asks for help. He sees a figure standing over him, and he assumes it's someone who can help him. Klebold looks down and says, "Sure, I'll help you," and then shoots him in the face at point-blank range.
And Kirkland survived that.
Miraculously, he survived.
Yeah.
But Daniel Rohrbaugh was executed right there on the sidewalk.
Where was security? I know there was an armed officer at the school, right? A deputy named Neil Gardner.
Neil Gardner was the community resource officer. He was eating lunch in his patrol car nearby. When the calls came in, female down, he responded. He drove his car up to the west entrance and immediately engaged Harris in a gunfight.
So there was an armed response very early on.
Very early. Gardner fired 4 shots from his service pistol. Harris fired 10 shots from his carbine. This is a crucial moment because, while Gardner didn't hit Harris, he distracted him. That suppression fire pinned Harris down and allowed a wounded student, Brian Anderson, and a teacher, Patty Nielsen, to get up and escape into the building, into the library.
So the shooters move into the building, and this leads us to the library. This is the part of the story that I think weighs heaviest on everyone. It's where the majority of the lives were lost.
Yes. They entered the library at 11:29 a.m. By this point, there were 52 students and 4 staff members hiding in there, huddled under desks, behind bookshelves. Patty Nielsen had dialed 911, and you can actually hear the beginning of the horror on that recorded tape. She's whispering to the operator as they enter.
What was the atmosphere like? Was it silent? Were they screaming?
It was a mix of terrifying silence from the students, all of them trying to be invisible. Before we get there, we want to remind you that if you are enjoying this deep dive into history, please consider supporting us through the PayPal link found in the description. Your support helps us keep the lights on and the research flowing.
Indeed. We will be right back with the siege.
and loud, arrogant shouting for the shooters. Harris yelled, "Get up!" They were taunting the students. They specifically called out for jocks, for anyone wearing a white baseball hat, which was a symbol of the athletic crowd.
Oh, revenge fantasy.
It was a performance. Everyone with a white hat, stand up, they yelled. Nobody stood up. They were trying to assert this dominance, acting out a fantasy against the social hierarchy of the school.
And then the executions began.
Yes. Kyle Velasquez was the first one killed inside the library. He was sitting at a computer table, likely just paralyzed by fear or confusion. He didn't hide in time. They shot and killed him. Then they moved through the library, systematically shooting under the tables.
I want to address a specific moment here, because it became a massive cultural touchpoint. The story of Cassie Bernal, the so-called martyr narrative.
This is a really important correction to the historical record. The story that went around the world, the one that became a phenomenon, was that one of the shooters pointed a gun at Cassie Bernal and asked, "Do you believe in God?" She said yes, and then he killed her.
That story inspired books, songs, a whole movement.
It became the defining spiritual narrative of the tragedy. But the witness testimony, when it was all gathered and analyzed, tells a different story.
So that exchange didn't actually happen to Cassie.
It appears that a similar exchange actually happened with a different student, a girl named Valine Schnurr. Valine had already been shot and was on the floor screaming, "Oh, God, help me." Klebold walked over to her, asked her if she believed in God. She said yes, and he asked why. But then he just got distracted and walked away. He didn't kill her.
So where did the Cassie story come from?
Cassie Bernal was killed by Harris. He slapped the table she was hiding under twice and said, "Peekaboo," before shooting her under the table. There was no theological interrogation with Cassie, but in the chaos and the trauma of memory, the stories merged, and the martyrdom of Cassie Bernal became a powerful, enduring myth. It just shows how badly we need to find meaning in the face of such horror.
It really does. We need to believe there was a higher purpose, or at least a moment of defiance.
Absolutely. And the cruelty in that library just continued. They targeted Isaiah Schul specifically because of his race. He was one of the few black students at the school. They used racial slurs, they taunted him, and then Harris shot him. It wasn't just random. It was fueled by pure hate.
There was also a strange interaction with a student named John Savage. They knew him.
John Savage was an acquaintance of Klebold's. He was hiding under a table and Klebold found him. Savage looked up and asked him, "Dylan, what are you doing?" Klebold replied, "Oh, just killing people." Just completely detached. Then Savage asked if he was going to kill him. And Klebold hesitated for a moment, then told him to get up and run. And he did. He escaped. It shows this chilling switch they could flip from remorseless executioner to granting mercy based on a whim or some past connection. It underlines the absolute power trip they were on.
So the shooting in the library lasted for about 7.5 minutes. By 11:35 a.m., the killing stopped. They had enough ammunition to kill everyone in that room. Why did they stop?
That is one of the enduring mysteries of the psychology of mass shooters. The adrenaline starts to fade. The reality of what they're doing sets in. Witnesses said they heard them complaining that the thrill was gone, that it wasn't fun anymore.
And there was a physical element too, right, with Harris?
Yes. Harris had broken his nose from the recoil of his shotgun when he was killing Cassie Bernal. He was bleeding, he was disoriented. They realized the bombs hadn't gone off. The grand terror event they had planned had failed. There were just two guys shooting kids in a library. The grandiosity was gone, so they just wandered out.
And this leads to the end. But before they died, there was a long gap. The suicide didn't happen until 12 or 8 p.m. That's more than half an hour later.
Right. They wandered the halls for over half an hour. They went back down to the cafeteria to look at their failed bombs. Security cameras caught them poking at the duffel bags, even shooting at the propane tanks with their rifles, trying to get them to explode. They failed again. They peered out windows at the growing police presence. They fired a few pot shots, but didn't really engage in a serious firefight.
And then they went back to the library.
They eventually returned to the library, to the scene of their worst crimes. They fired a few last shots out the window at the police, and then they committed suicide simultaneously near the bookshelves.
While all this is happening, the police response is unfolding outside. And looking back with modern eyes, it's just painful to watch. They set up a perimeter.
This is the critical analysis of the police response that changed everything. In 1999, the standard police doctrine for this kind of situation was contain and wait. You secure the perimeter, you contain the situation, you wait for SWAT. You try to negotiate. You do not rush in.
But that doctrine was built for a different kind of crime.
It was built for hostage situations or bank robberies, where the perpetrator usually wants to live, wants to get away with something. It was not built for an active shooter whose only goal is a body count.
And that doctrine cost Dave Sanders his life.
Dave Sanders was the teacher who heroically ran through the school warning students when the shooting started. He saved hundreds of lives by directing them to safety in classrooms. But he was shot twice in the hallway near the science wing.
He didn't die immediately.
No, he managed to get to a science classroom where students, including a boy named Aaron Hansey, administered first aid. They used shirts to try and stop the bleeding. They put a sign in the window of the classroom, "1 bleeding to death." They were on the phone with 911, begging for help to come get him.
And the police didn't come in.
They didn't. They were holding the perimeter. Dave Sanders bled out for over 3 hours. The SWAT team didn't reach that room until nearly 3 p.m., well after he had passed away. That failure is the reason why police training changed forever.
What's the doctrine now?
Now, the doctrine is immediate entry. The first officers on scene go to the sound of the guns. You don't wait for a team. You move to stop the killing. Dave Sanders' death is the tragic, horrible reason that doctrine exists today.
We also have to talk about Patrick Ireland. The image of him, the boy in the window, is burned into my brain.
It's an unforgettable image. He was shot in the head and the foot in the library. He was paralyzed on one side, fading in and out of consciousness for hours. Yet somehow he summoned the strength to drag himself across the library floor, over bodies to the window. He pushed himself out and literally fell into the arms of SWAT officers who were on the roof of an armored vehicle below.
An incredible will to survive.
Just a moment of sheer human will to survive, and it was broadcast live on national television. It became one of the defining images of hope amidst the horror.
So the event ends. The shooters are dead. The toll is horrific. 12 students and 1 teacher murdered. 24 injured, many of them catastrophically. But the impact was just beginning. This event triggered a massive cultural response.
It was a moral panic, in the truest sense of the term. Society was terrified. We needed someone, something to blame. And since the shooters were dead, we looked for scapegoats in the culture they consumed. The media fixated on goth culture.
And Marilyn Manson.
Marilyn Manson became the poster child for everything that was supposedly wrong with youth culture. They blamed video games, specifically Doom.
I remember that so clearly. If you wore a trench coat or black clothes to school in the fall of 1999, you were suddenly a suspect. You were pulled into the principal's office.
Exactly. And it wasn't even accurate. As we discussed, Harris and Klebold weren't really part of the goth scene. They were their own twisted thing. But the narrative stuck because it was easy. It led to the era of zero-tolerance policies in schools.
Right. Suddenly, everything was a threat.
Schools started expelling kids for drawing pictures of guns, for writing dark poetry, for making morbid jokes. We saw the rise of metal detectors, of having police officers now called resource officers in every school. The modern security state of American schools, the clear backpacks, the locked doors, the active shooter drills. It was all born on April 20th, 1999.
And the cultural ripple effect in the arts was just huge, too. You have songs like Pumped Up Kicks by Foster the People, which is this really catchy, upbeat pop song that's actually about a school shooter.
All the other kids with the pumped up kicks, you better run, not run my gun.
Yeah.
It's a direct descendant of Columbine. You have movies like Elephant by Gus Van Sant, which is this haunting, almost silent film reenactment of a Columbine-style event. And of course, Michael Moore's documentary Bowling for Columbine, which used the tragedy as a lens to explore America's gun culture.
The event just seeped into our art because we couldn't process it logically.
We couldn't. It became a cultural scar. There was even a controversial video game called Super Columbine Massacre RPG, where you play as Harris and Klebold. It was an attempt, a very strange one, to process the event through the very medium that was being blamed for it.
And there is also the copycat effect. This is maybe the darkest and most enduring legacy. The basement tapes, the journals, they became a script for others.
They did. Harris and Klebold wanted fame. They wanted to be remembered as anti-heroes, as rebels.
Yeah.
And tragically, for a certain subset of alienated, angry, and dangerous young men, they became exactly that.
So they inspired others.
We have seen shooter after shooter at Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Parkland, and so many others cite Columbine as their direct inspiration. They'd study the tactics, they try to beat the score, the body count. The detailed reporting on their methods, which was necessary for public understanding, unintentionally provided a handbook for future tragedies.
Which brings us back to the start. The mission of this deep dive was to analyze, not just recount. When you look at the totality of this, the failed bombing, the missed police warnings, the flawed tactical doctrine, what is the big takeaway for you?
The takeaway for me, is that Columbine was a systemic failure of imagination. Parents couldn't imagine their polite sons were secretly monsters. The police couldn't imagine a teenager's angry website would lead to mass murder. The school couldn't imagine a bombing in their cafeteria. We were all operating in a world where "it can't happen here" was the default setting. Columbine shattered that innocence forever.
It forced us to realize the threat could come from inside the building.
From the kids we think we know, from the quiet ones, the smart ones, the ones who are good at fooling us.
And that leads to the final provocative thought I want to leave our listeners with today. We mentioned Eric Harris's obsession with the video game Doom. There's a letter he wrote to the creators of the game, id Software, that was found after his death. He wasn't just a fan playing a game, he was asking them if the next version, Doom 3, could be made hyper-realistic.
That letter is so haunting to read. He's asking about the physics, about placing weapons, about the graphics engine. He is actively blurring the line between his fantasy of committing real-world violence and the digital simulation of it.
It makes you wonder. In a world now where reality and fantasy are increasingly blended, where mental health signals are often lost in the noise of teenage angst, and where access to lethal means is still frighteningly easy, have we really fixed the cracks that Harris and Klebold slipped through? Or have we just built higher fences around them?
That is the question we are all still trying to answer, more than 20 years later.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. I know it wasn't an easy one, but it was a necessary one. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. We hope we helped you understand the complexity of those 51 days. If you value this analysis, please remember you can support us via the PayPal link in the description.
Your support allows us to keep digging into history.
Don't forget to follow the podcast for more deep dives into the events that defined us. Goodbye.